We want to introduce Brother Leo Gerard, and Leo became involved in the union at the age of 18, and he served 6 years as the director of District 6 in Ontario, and he served as the national director for Canada. He also served 2 terms as the USW's International Secretary-Treasurer prior to becoming the 7th International President. Delegates, Leo Gerard, the International President of the United Steelworkers, could not join us here in person today. However, he's made every effort to join us live through a video conference feed to address you. So please welcome Leo Gerard.
Thank you. I don't know if somebody has to give me a signal as to whether or not you can hear me. Somebody could wave, raise their hand, do something great. I have to confess that for a guy who still uses a flip phone, this is pretty advanced technology for me. Let me just take up what Lee said. I apologize for not being able to be there, but I had made a commitment to Jenny Kwan in British Columbia several months ago to attend her 20th anniversary, and I was to be a speaker there, and I'm not interested in breaking commitments, and with the help of Lee and Ken Newman and technology folks in both of our unions, we've managed to get me an opportunity to address you. So I want to apologize for not being able to be there in person, but be appreciative that I'm getting the fact to address you in this way. I want to be very clear, and I know it's very difficult to watch a talking head on a video for an extended period of time, so I'm going to try to have my comments to be concise and then hopefully have a few minutes, if possible, to answer some questions. One of the things I want to make clear is we've had 18 mergers. Since the birth of the union. We've had over half a dozen since I became president or secretary-treasurer. And I can honestly say that in none of those mergers has anyone in the leadership or even the membership been disappointed in the merger and the commitments we've made. I want to give a couple of broader examples. For example, when we merged with the paper workers, I'll use an example of International Paper. International Paper had 93 separate collective agreements, each one negotiated individually, and the company would pick the weakest link and negotiate that agreement. Then they would take that collective bargaining with that weakest link and try and impose that on all the other 92 local unions. And for 20 years, the paper workers were walking backwards, one step at a time. We chose to tell International Paper that that might have been okay for them, but it wasn't okay for us. We then spent 8 months in negotiations with them, and we negotiated a brand new collective bargaining process where now we negotiate 2 collective agreements. One for the mills that make the pulp and paper, and another one for what they call the converters that make the downstream products for that. And the reason I wanted to raise that is to make sure that you understand our union is not interested in mergers for the purpose of membership accumulation. We're interested in doing mergers so that we can build a stronger union and a stronger labor movement, and then move from there to build an activist union. A union that is not an activist union can't serve its members totally and completely the way it should. And so we've been trying to build our union, to mold our union, to rebuild our union, to remold our union, so that we're building an activist union. And as you've gone through, and I apologize for not having been able to see the various parts of the merger summary that you may have gone through. But let me sort of put together a synopsis. When we merged with the rubber workers, they had been locked out. Their union was on the verge of being busted. They were broke. The plants were scabbed. And Bridgestone, Firestone, and Goodyear had called it the War of '94. And they were going to break the labor movement in the tire and rubber industry. We merged while they were locked out. I was secretary-treasurer. The vote was completed on a Saturday night at about 11 o'clock at night. At 11 o'clock the next morning, we were in my office as secretary-treasurer issuing checks to the local unions. And what we said in that bumper sticker we produced the next day is that it ain't over yet. We then took over that thing, ran a global campaign. We were in 27 countries. And at the end, every one of our members went back to work. Every one of our members got the scabs out. Every one of our members got raises. Every one of our members got the protection of a collective agreement. That's not a union that doesn't take its merger commitments lightly. It's a union that takes its merger commitments meaningfully. And so one of the things that I want to stress is that our objective is to, right now, if we could get this merger done soon, our objective is to help the members of your union, the members of what would then become the local union, get ready for bargaining. Nothing can be more important than making sure that we're as best prepared as we can be for bargaining. That stuff that we're trying to do would include getting our strategic campaigns ready, doing more building power education, doing more stuff where we can figure out how to better communicate to the membership, let the membership know that we're building an activist union. And when we're building an activist union, I assume you may have run through some of the programs, but let me try to do that. We're building a program where we're trying to prepare our union not just for today, but for tomorrow. And we want to make sure as we look to the union for tomorrow, we're also not ignoring what we've done in the past and what can we learn from what we've done in the past. What can we learn from the unions that have merged with us? We're a different union than we were back in the 60s. Because of all the mergers we've had, we've been able to learn from the best of those unions that merged with us, and they've been able to learn from the best of what we do. And as a result of that, we've built the kinds of programs that we hope are responsive. We're now in the process of building a next generation program, trying to bring in the younger members of our union into training programs. We've asked every district to put together next generation coordinators. I'm pleased that we're doing that. We're building a Women of Steel program where we've got literally thousands of women activists who are not only playing leadership roles in their local unions, but they're playing leadership roles in their communities, and they're building a network of women that are able to stand, because, to be extremely candid, in the tire industry, in the mining industry, in the steel industry, in the aluminum industry, in those industries, in the birth of our union, those were mostly male jobs in those times, and the bosses did the hiring. And women were relegated to a lower level. You could talk to Carol Laundrie, who comes from British Columbia, about how she led a strike at her local union. And that was not that long ago, and that strike was to make sure that women in their local got paid equal to men. So we've built that structure in the Women of Steel. We're building a leadership development program, a 4-year program. And again, I hope that Vice President Redmond touched on it. We're building a program that makes sure we recognize the diversity of not just our union, but the diversity of our society, so that the people we're developing to be the future leaders, Next Gen, Women of Steel, and leadership development courses. That's to build a foundation for an activist union. We do local union education. We train local union rank and file people so that they've got expertise, so they can go and train their sisters and brothers in their workplaces, in their communities, so that we don't have to allocate resources to transfer people and to travel people and spend a lot of money. If we can get rank and file people that are trained up and can do the training, we do it right there in their communities, and we save the local unions money, and we broaden the base of the union. We do tool courses. We want to train the trainer programs. We do occupational health and safety training. Yesterday in Pittsburgh, before I left, I addressed what's called the TOP program, a health and safety training program that we had about 100 people in the building taking training. Those trainers, when they finish that training program, a 3-week program, that 100 people will be going out into workplaces of all kinds of diversity and training more workers and putting more people through health and safety training, and it's specific to the industry that they're from. So we can do that kind of stuff. We've made commitments, and I've looked at those commitments, and somebody should wave a hand if I'm not repeating or am repeating, I should say, the commitments we've made in certain areas, like training 1,200 people in building power, training 20 local union instructors at TWU, training 35 people in the local union leadership program. All those commitments, there's a list of commitments in the summary. Those commitments are meant to be made so that we can create and build an activist union. We're building a political program, and I see Director Steve Hunt up there. Steve is developing a program, a trial program in British Columbia called Steelworker Votes, and trying to figure out how to be more effective to elect our own people to office at the municipal level, get them ready to run at the provincial level, get them ready to run at the future at the federal level, and you start by building the program right at the base level. We're doing that. Most other unions don't do that. And I don't need to spend a lot of time talking about our Strike and Defense Fund. I mentioned it with the Bridgestone Firestone. We didn't have $300 million when we took on the issue with Bridgestone Firestone after the rubber worker merger. We had probably half of that, but we spent every dime that we needed to spend. And I can remember a reporter saying to then President Becker, "How could you afford to spend that money just after a merger?" George's answer was, "How could we afford not to? An injury to one is an injury to all." And again, it may be repetitious. Steve Hunt called me and said, the teachers have gone broke in British Columbia. Steve, wants to bring it to the BC Fed that we raise money to support them. And our response from a unanimous by executive board is, tell Steve we'll put $2 million in now, and if they need more, we'll come with more. It's not an accident that not long after that, the government understood that the labor movement wasn't going to stand by and the steelworkers were going to play a lead, and they got a settlement. That our legislative department, I remember saying this the last time I addressed your convention. We have to develop a short-term, mid-term, and long-term strategy so that we're a player in the legislative arena. We have to be a player federally in Ottawa of what's going to happen in the telecommunications licensing, what's going to happen with telecommunications merging. I'm reading a book right now, to be candid, scares the hell out of me. It's called The Next Machine Age, and it's talking about how technology is growing exponentially, and that things that are happening now with these smartphones and iPhones and all that malarkey, that 15 years ago people were saying you can never get technology to do that. Now it's doing it. And they're talking about artificial intelligence, and you can do all kinds of new stuff. Well, that's going to have some kind of legislative action from Ottawa. I don't know how much of that might become provincial at some point. I confess I'm not smart enough about that. But I do know this. If we don't have a comprehensive legislative strategy, and if we're not persistent, we're the ones that are going to get run over. So one of the things that is beyond collective bargaining, if you're going to build an activist union, is to be able to have a reputation in the political arena. We're going to play a role in electing people, and we're going to play a role in legislative action. And I'll be very candid. I'm not in favor of strategic voting. As I said one time in a convention in Canada, I would vote for a statue full of pigeon shit before I'd vote for a conservative or liberal, because the one thing I know is the statue ain't going to hurt me. And I want to support someone who has my values. And I can say this, in my time in Canada, looking back, and people get short memories, you look back at the things that makes Canada different. Our pension plan system, which has become inadequate, our federal pension plan system. You look at our national health care. You look at women's rights that we've done. You look at all those things. Those things were led by people who shared our values. They maybe didn't get to be government, but they got to be the voice in opposition. They got to be the voice sometimes that tipped the cup over. And all of that stuff was stuff brought by either the CCF or the NDP. And sometimes you can have power just by showing up. You don't always have to be placing your vote with the outfit that's going to win and lose your principles in the meantime. This union will not sacrifice our principles to get some goddamn liberal premier flying out to BC to say nice things about us while they're going to cut our throat next week. Anyhow, I've got to calm myself down. But as you can tell, I'm quite upset about all that. We said that we would do, and a commitment to that, and I see Mark up there, and I tease Mark and Ken in the national office that we've got lawyers everywhere. I wonder what the hell they do. We've committed ourselves to helping in your legal costs. We've committed ourselves to helping offset that. We've allocated in the merger a sum of money to do that. We've doubled the amount of money that we're prepared to commit to. I saw you tapping Mark on the shoulder. He defends himself well. That we double the amount of money we're committed to organizing. Because you know what? Again, no BS. Organizing is really, really hard. And we've got to have, again, we've got to look for an opportunity to what I call low-hanging fruit. We've got to look for an opportunity strategically for places where we can win, where we have a positive shot at winning even as we just get started. Then we have to look at a long-term strategy. How do we stay at it? Are there places where we could go in and bargain neutrality? Are there places where we could go in and sign people up? Are there ways that we just want to vote in a campaign where the National Labor Relations Board in the U.S. allowed electronic voting? And in an environment where the boss can stand by the door or stand by the voting place to watch who goes in and intimidate people about voting for the union in places where you have to vote still, that is very intimidating. But what you can do when you do it electronically, you do it from home, and over a 3-week period, they gave them 3 weeks to vote, and they vote electronically. The union won an overwhelming victory. So are there things that we can do that will do that? And so legislative action, supporting the legal department, giving you more money for organizing. These are all commitments. And again, to be candid, we're not asking anybody to take a leap of faith. What I will ask you to do is check our track record. We've merged 18 times. I've been a part of those mergers since 1977. In those mergers, we've lived up to the commitments that we made, and we've developed to be a better union because of the unions that merged with us, brought their knowledge, their experience, their industry experiences, and shared them with the rest of us. I see in the summary there's something about an emergency response team, ERT. We're the only union in North America that has an emergency response team for critical accidents and, God help us, fatalities. We didn't invent that. That came from a union called the OCAW that then merged with the Paper Workers Union and created a union called PACE. And the union called PACE merged with us. And as we learned about some of the things they do, we learned about the emergency response team. We've now got an emergency response program, not just a team. We've got a leadership team with people in Toronto and people in Pittsburgh, and trained people in every one of our regions, not just our districts, but our regions. And you can talk to Steve Hunt offline after, when we had the explosion at Babine and Lakeland, where more than 40 people were injured and 4 were killed. Our emergency response team, both from Canada and from US, showed up in those communities to help those families. They never deal with it. They don't expect to deal with a fatality. They go to work every day hoping to come home. The traumatic shock that puts into the local union, the traumatic shock that puts into the community, they need help. And it's not just money. They need help to understand what happened. Our emergency response team went into that. We also raised money for that, and we did those things. And I can remember people saying that the Babine mill would never reopen. Our union went to bat, worked and coordinated and built allies and built relationships to get that mill reopened. We did that. Now, am I ticked off that Christy Clark went there and got her picture taken after she'd opposed the damn mill? Yeah, but that's a political mistake, not an economic mistake. We did the right thing, fighting to get that mill reopened. So, and I heard that we had one of our members from Alma, one of our leaders from Alma, to come in and talk about the global campaign we put on. I'm happy to tell you, and I think in particular, some of you have met Napoleon Gomez, some of you obviously know about him. Just in the last couple of weeks, time goes by, I should say, last couple of months, Napoleon became a Canadian citizen. And he became a Canadian citizen, not that he wanted to leave Mexico, but we strategized with him and we said collectively, if you can become a Canadian citizen, that will prove to the Mexican authorities that there's nothing in your alleged record that prevents you from going back to Mexico, because Canada wouldn't let you become a citizen if you had a criminal record. And then we went to the courts in Mexico supporting him in our 8th year, and the Mexican government finally threw out the 11th charge of the same thing. And the Mexican courts actually said that this ends the process. So we've stuck with Napoleon and the Mineros Union for 8 years, and his name is now cleared. He's a Canadian citizen, and soon we're going to get him to travel back to Mexico so he can be leading his members right there while he's with them. We're doing the same thing in Brazil. We're doing the same thing in Australia with the 2 manufacturing and industrial unions. The telecommunications union in Australia is a partner with us. We do South Africa. We do Germany, and as you know, we built a whole new union that is anxious to have the telecommunications members of hopefully our union in the future, if this merger goes through, meet with their telecommunications folks in Great Britain. And we created Workers Uniting. We did all of those things because even though some of these companies pretend that they're local-based community company, the fact is they're multinationals and they try to operate anywhere in the world where it beats their advantage. So the objective that I want to share with you is that hopefully this merger will go through. It's coming close to bargaining for your union with your major employers. We want to expedite the work that we can do between now and when you get a collective agreement renewal with your major employers. We want them to know that we're training. We want them to know that the day that the votes are counted, if they're finished at midnight 01, you have $300 and some million access to a strike and defense fund. We want them to know that we're going to train. We want them to know that we're going to do these things. We want them to know that the times have changed. And I read in some letter that we shouldn't take a leap of faith. This is not a leap of faith. This is a written commitment. And in fairness, we're committing to things we can't do in a strategic alliance. We're committing to things that we can only do in a merger. But all of that stuff that we would do, it's important that that signal of the renewed strength of the union get transmitted to the employer. And again, I don't want to scare the shit out of people. We're not here looking for a fight. I just saw something from a company called Honeywell back in the US, where next Saturday our members are holding a big rally in Metropolis. I don't know how many of you used to read comic books. Metropolis is Superman's hometown. They got a big statue of Superman when you go into the town. We keep talking about Honeywell's going to take on Superman. They're going to find some kryptonite here somewhere. And for those who used to read comic books, that the management guy at Honeywell wrote the local union a letter saying, I can't believe you're going to have a rally when we're on the verge of reconvening negotiations. What kind of signal does that send? And the local union and our district director wrote them back a letter that says the kind of signal that it sends is that we have solidarity and we're committed to negotiating a fair agreement. So the stuff that we want to expedite, should this merger be ratified this time, is to send the message that we want a collective agreement, we want one fair, we want one comprehensive, but if you're going to try to kick us around, don't expect that it's going to be easy. And so we're not looking for fights, we're looking for settlements. And the one thing I can tell you this, in the period of time since 2008, when we voted almost unanimously at our convention to increase our contribution to the Strike and Defense Fund, and we wanted to get it up higher. We didn't want it up higher so that we could have money in the bank. We didn't want it up higher so that we'd go looking for strikes. We wanted it up higher so it would send a message to employers, whether you're a smallest plant of 2 or 3 people or a big one of 15 or 20,000. There are no second-class citizens in this union, and we'll expedite to train, and we'll express every ounce of solidarity through our Strike and Defense Fund that it takes to win. And the membership will determine if and when they go on strike, if and when they ratify a collective agreement, and if and when it's acceptable enough for them. That fund gives them that power, and that's the commitment that I, on behalf of our executive board, because some of you have attended our convention, you've met our executive board, you know they're all from the ranks, and their commitment to wanting to bring this merger about is unanimous. Steve and Ken had explained the previous merger that we shared with the board. They were unanimous. This merger has some enhancements that we've talked about on organizing and more training and doing some of the things you wanted, that we never wanted to have influence or control over your pension plan. That's obviously been made more clear. Mark just explained this business of the waiver so that people shouldn't misrepresent. And the last thing I'll say is that I may be over-optimistic. I may be a little bit naive, but I'm pretty convinced if people would have told the truth that spoke out in some ways the last time, instead of misrepresenting the facts, and if we wouldn't have had the interference of an outside group, this merger would have probably been done, and we'd be further along in getting ready for the next round of bargaining, and we'd be further along in a lot of the training and development. And because of Lee and Ken's tenacity, they finally got that union to agree that, yeah, it was one of ours, and that we're not going to do it again. I hope that they're telling the truth, because this decision should be based on the truth, on the facts, and our commitment and our history of living up to those commitments in other mergers. So I thank you for your patience, and I know it's not easy to watch a talking head on a screen. I'm optimistic and hopeful that in a few short weeks that you'll be full-fledged members of the Steelworkers Union. And as I said, the day after the merger vote with the rubber workers, we're signing strike checks. If the merger vote goes right, the day after that vote is cast, I would assume that we will be sitting down and drafting the schedule for training and development and giving you the resources of research and development of what you need to get ready for the most important round of bargaining that you'll have, and we'll be by your side. So thank you very much. Solidarity forever, and all we want is the truth and the facts and a vote, and we want to help you, help us build an activist union. Thank you so much, and I'll take questions if you got time. I'm actually waving at you. Hey, Tony. Go Steelers.
So thanks for that, Leo. I appreciate that. I thought it was quite a coup when we were able to get a lawyer out in British Columbia here, but I guess you really just wanted to get one less lawyer in Toronto.
Can you hear me?
Can
you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
That's the first time it's the first time I've seen Mark blush.
BC's not
accused
that
him of
bad.
being the contracting out chief of the legal department before.
Okay, Leo, I'd like to take the opportunity here to open up the mics here, that if anybody has any questions that they would like to ask Brother Gerard directly, please go to a mic, and I'll ask you to face the back of the room, because that's where the camera is located, and ask your questions of Brother Gerard. I'll ask the chair to coordinate that for me, please.
Mic 2.
DeVoe 604. Brother Gerard, I had a question for you. So today we pretty much had detail, finances, detail on everything about the numbers, but there's one number that I'm asking about. What does 1 million stand for organizing? What does it look like having 1 million to organize with?
Well, look at it. Let me just put it this way. Can you hear?
Yes.
Okay. It can be allocated in a number of ways, and I want to be really blunt about it. 1 million is just a number. If you were talking about it as being full-time staff working on organizing, you can do it in a number of ways. You could say, okay, it's 9 staff for a year, wages and benefits and all that stuff. Or you can say, well, we're going to do it this way. I'd rather put it in another way. The million is a symbolic number that we're saying, this is what we want to do. It's symbolic because, as Ken and Steve and I and others, Fred is there, can tell you, we've set aside an organizing fund, but we also do accounting that pays for things in different ways. The organizing fund of our union right now has about 10 million in it, but we allocate 3% of the revenue to the union all the time. That comes out to about, depending on the membership and who's around, who's not, who's up and who's down and all that, it comes out to somewhere between $25 and $28 million a year. There's nothing that says we would only spend $1 million. If, as an example, if Steve and Ken and the other directors and Lee and your folks came together and said, here's the organizing plan, here's the low-hanging fruit where we think in the next 3 months we could pick up X amount of members, here's where we think a midterm strategy. We have to work this sector in these communities, probably it's going to be 1, 2, 3 years before we break through. We think that over the next 3 years that would cost us $3 million. We're not going to say no. Organizing is really hard. And you have to have a strategy. You know, you could, as I say, throw crap against the wall and see what sticks and wait for the phone to ring. That's not organizing. So the $1 million is a symbolic statement of our commitment to you that we want to organize in your sector. Am I smart enough to know where the opportunities are? No, not at this time. But I can tell you what, between the knowledge of the TWU, the skilled research of our people, the organizing skills that our folks have, we can build the program to organize in the sector. The sector has been left untouched for way too long. One of the things that I learned from one of the union victories that another union had in the U.S. is they organized a whole bunch of people that work at home. People that for some of us you'd never think you'd be able to talk to, but they figured out how to do it using social media. We haven't done that yet, except in Quebec. Our district in Quebec has learned how to organize the fly-in mines using social media. So we may have a whole bunch of people in the telecommunications sector that are now being encouraged to work from home and treated like shit, just because they're given a privilege of working from home while they got their baby on their lap and they're trying to take care of house and they're doing all those things. They get paid less in far too many instances. So I don't want to leave the impression that $1 million is the be-all and end-all. It's a symbolic number that is meant to express to the members of the TWU our commitment to organizing, but there's nothing that says we wouldn't spend more. There's nothing that says if we had a good campaign we wouldn't spend a lot more. But we're going to try to build a team. We want to get people out of the industry that know the industry, that can sit down with our people, both in our communications and our legal, and develop the strategy for taking on some meaningful organizing in the telecommunications sector. Does that help you?
Perfect answer, brother. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mike 1.
Kevin Rary, Local 502. The question I have for you, it seems that when reading the document there, gradually we'll be squeezed into the...
A little bit louder, please.
Sorry. Gradually we'll be squeezed into that USW transitional phase where we'll end up having a model where we have one rep per 2,500, right? Now, we have a pretty good model, working model as it is now, and it seems that we wouldn't be able to keep that model of servicing our members if this goes through. Is that a correct interpretation by myself, or am I wrong?
You're wrong.
Good to hear.
I'm sorry?
I said good to hear.
I didn't hear.
Good to hear that I'm wrong.
Okay. Yeah, the reality is that the structure that we've left in place, and that is that your local unions are going to have those business agents that you now have in structure absorbed into the larger local union of the TWU. That doesn't mean that we won't have additional resources, whether we call them servicing staff or what we do, available to you. We have no interest in reducing the amount of service that our local unions get, or that the parent local union gets here. The structure that has been built is that there'd be an overall structure of the Telecommunications Council. There's going to be local unions and units and all that put together. And there's and don't quote me, I may get some of this a little bit disjointed, but there's a structure where they'll all become employees of the parent local union. And so we're not interested in reducing the service. And in fact, I can again say, learning from other mergers, in some of the units that we've had from PACE, some of the units we had from the glass GMP, not them, the glass and brick workers union, they had a provision where their local unions were able to increase their dues so that their local unions could hire more full-time people. We didn't do anything to object to that. And in fact, if you look at a lot of our large locals, look at the locals of the IWA, the large ones, you call them business agents, they just happen to call them full-time officers. And they go and they negotiate money into their pot from their collective bargaining, and they hire full-time local union officers. In my home local 6500 in Sudbury, we got something like 21 full-time people in that local. Some of them paid for by the local, some of them paid for through collective bargaining, where the employer pays for the health and safety committee, the grievance committee. That's all we make the company subsidize that. They still have a servicing staff rep, one person, but they've got 21 other people or 20 other people full-time. So to the brother's question, our desire is not to shrink the amount of servicing, but to increase the ability and increase the training and development. That we want TWU to be a first-class member of the Steelworkers Union, no second-class members, and we want to build an activist union together in the telecommunications industry.
Okay, so at this time, we are running out of time for this segment. We want to move on to our motion. So I have a speakers list. Denise, you are not on that list. Kevin, you are. Calvin, you are. Okay. So we're going to drop it off here so that we can move on to the motion. Yep. You two are on it. Mike, too.
So, okay. So I had the opportunity to be involved with the Building Power, and I see that the USW is really committed to the training. That was a great course, Leo. I thank you for that. My question to you is, given that the USW Constitution vests absolute power in the President to approve or not approve of strikes and strike pay, how can we trust that we'll get the support if we need it?
That's a really good question, and there's a lot of history to that provision. Many years ago, before I was even an active member of our union, we had a very nasty strike in Quebec, in Murdochville. If there's some folks up on the stage from Quebec, you might have heard the Murdochville circumstance. It was a Noranda operation. And the collective agreement that they had was being gutted by Noranda, and it was their first one. And it was an agreement between the local and Noranda. And the local got sued in Quebec. The Quebec laws weren't always as good as they are now. And in that suit, the local union lost all of its revenue and it lost its union hall. The courts made them give that up, and so it really busted the union. So what we did as a union after that is we tried to protect our local unions. So that if a local union goes, we tried to protect the union, I should say. If a local union goes on a wildcat strike, we would take an official position that that strike wasn't sanctioned by us. If a local union had its collective agreement, we would try to have that collective agreement be with either the local and the international or with the international. So if they were going to sue somebody, it had to be us because we had deep pockets. I can tell you that as president of the union, now since 2001, I couldn't begin to tell you how many strikes we've had or lockouts, but I can tell you that there's never been one that's not approved. We have a provision that's in the Constitution to protect our institution if people get stupid, but we endorse every strike, in particular if it's one that's been chosen by the members. The members have the right to make a decision whether or not they'll accept a collective agreement and whether or not they'll go on strike. Once they've made that decision, there's never been a time when we have not stepped up and defended and advanced the interests of our members until we get to an agreement they're prepared to ratify.
Mike 2.
Brother Gerard, my name is Cam McPherson. I'm from Local 30. I'd like to thank you for your time. You said earlier that there are parts of this agreement that cannot be implemented under strategic alliance, but only under an actual merger. Could you please answer the question, does support for bargaining in the form of strategic bargaining advice and legal advice through bargaining fall under the category of not being able to be, granted under strategic alliance, but only under a merger? And if so, could you explain the reasons that that would be so, please?
Sure, that I guess with tongue-in-cheek, I could say membership has its privileges, that we're spending members' dues, and there's a limited amount of that we would do in a strategic alliance. The thing that is most not available is the Strike and Defense Fund. And I can well remember, and some of you, in fact, I want to be careful here, none of you look that young that you wouldn't have been around in 2005, in one way or another. We went, and Kenny can help me, I think it was 2005, that we were willing to lend you $2 million. You were in many ways in the same kind of predicament that the teachers were in. They were going broke and the government thought they were going to bust their chops. We don't have any ability to pay you weekly strike pay or bi-weekly strike pay in an alliance. We would do a loan. If you're members, you're entitled to that strike pay. Day one. We couldn't, I got the list of trainings. I think we're committed to training almost 2,000 people over a period of time. All I could say was, do you think it would be fair to ask our members to pay that freight? If you weren't members, why wouldn't every other organization ask us to do the same? So it's not about being exclusionary, it's about being inclusive. And we have no right, there's no rule that we could write, there's nothing we can do, that access to the Strike and Defense Fund is only available to members. Could we do some strategic campaigning? Absolutely, it's solidarity. Could we do a little bit of more building power training? Absolutely. We did some building power training between discussions because we wanted the membership and the leadership to at least taste the course, to know what it meant, because we didn't want to give up on the possibility of merger. And we wanted that if we're going to do that, you at least get a sense of the kind of stuff we're talking about. You know, we can't justify sending someone to leadership course for 4 years at our expense, and a leadership course cost us about $20,000 per member to go through. Well, we couldn't send 35 people to leadership training at our expense if they weren't members. So those kinds of things, does that help you?
It does, but for clarification, my question was specifically concerned with support through bargaining in the form of legal advice and strategic bargaining advice. So for clarification, what I understand your answer to be is it's because your union dues would be paying for that, correct?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Mike 2.
Ruggles Local 18, and it's kind of awkward, a little awkward to do it this way because can you sort of see me and I can see you at the same time?
See you.
So what I'm hearing you say is that we could get help for bargaining and training, but you don't want to do that. You don't want to, invest in those resources. But let's say we paid you to help us do that. Let's say we paid you to help us train and provide bargaining professionals, tacticians, financial analysts, telecom analysts, all the things that we need, right? So really the only difference would be then is that we don't have access to the strike fund and we could take a loan. So given all of that, why not just prove yourselves first? Why not? Why is the opt-out clause on the eve of bargaining? Why is the opt-out clause there when we're going to give notice right on the, because to me, this whole merger agreement's like signing a prenup clause that ends on your wedding night.
Well, are you done?
Well, I don't want my time to run out, so could you answer, and then I don't want I want the clock to stop so that it's not my 3 minutes.
Look, I want to be both respectful but blunt. I think you got to understand that we're not a union that's up for sale. We're not in the process of going around the labor movement and say, these are all the kinds of services we do. Who'd like to buy some? That's not solidarity. What we're talking about is being part of a union that has a track record, giving you access to our research department, giving access to our strategic campaigns department, giving access to building power, doing a whole bunch of training of almost 2,000 people committed to. That's not signing a prenup agreement. That's us making a commitment that we're going to do those things. And if you say, why do it now? The reason you do it now is so that you can send a signal to your major employers that times have changed. We've got a big organization that's standing behind us, just like when Steve Hunt told the government that the Steelworkers Union was going to put $2 million behind the teachers. You now go to the bargaining table and say we have more than $300 million behind us. We've got this research, we've got that commitment, we've got this training, we've got that, and those are commitments. That's not signing a prenup. That's getting yourself ready for the most important bargaining that most of you will have been through. And I'm not putting this union up for sale and say that people can come and look at what service. Well, we'd all like to be women of steel, but we don't want to be steelworkers. We'd all like to have strategic campaigns that will pay you. How much a head would you charge us? That's not building unions. That's not building solidarity. And it's certainly not my view of a union, with all due respect.
Order in the hall, please. Order.
My experience is that, and I've been doing this for a long time. I got active in my union in Sudbury in 1969. Before that, my dad was an organizer. I sat on the basement steps while my dad had membership and stewards meeting in the basement of our house when I was 12 and 13 years old. The most important thing that employers understand is solidarity and power. When they understand that workers stick together, that's what building power is about. It's about building a network of workers who talk to each other, who are solid, who stand by each other, and so the boss can't easily divide you. When you come up and you say, can you sell me this service? Can you sell me that service? What the hell do you think the boss thinks? This is a union that's putting itself up for sale, and I'm sorry, I won't be a part of that.
So the response is that you won't help us?
No, that's not the response at all. The response was you asked me if you could buy services, and the answer is no.
Well, I'm saying that you're saying that
We
strategic.
help every union.
We're not going to go back and forth.
I still have part of my 3 minutes left?
If you had a question that was not asked yet.
Right, so this is the point. You're saying it's not a leap of faith. Our members think that it is. They want to see that opt-out clause come after bargaining, and they want you to prove themselves. And I don't think that's unreasonable. I think it's prudent. I think it's a safe thing to do. And all kinds of promises can be made from now till whenever. But when our only chance to get out comes before you have to prove yourself, that's not good enough for my members.
Well, let me just say this, and again, I want to be respectful. It was good enough for almost 65% of your members the last time. And this is even a more enhanced document than you had the last time. And the last time we had people from both within your union and from outside the union that went around misrepresenting what was actually in the agreement, and didn't just misrepresent that by accident, misrepresented it by large margins. And what we're doing, and I said it earlier before I closed, all we want is people to tell the truth and look at the track record of the steelworkers. We've had 18 mergers. There's not one of those mergers where the membership of that union got misrepresented. There's not one of those unions now that would go back to their old union. Even the IWA, where we kept lots of their structure because there was lots of good stuff in it. You've got lots of good stuff in your structure. But we're not going to have a union. We're not going to be a union that says, here's the menu of things we do. Pick them and tell us how much you charge. And to try and say that we should not do anything until after the merger, after the negotiations, is asking us to have our existing members spend all of those resources. I even talked, when I talked about leadership, it's $20,000 per member. The first year leadership course this year, it had 120 people in it. We've committed to doing 35 of yours. Take 35 times 20,000. Look through the numbers that are in there. We said we'll put $1 million for organizing. We said we'd put $750,000 to help you with legal costs. Don't tell me that those aren't real commitments. I'm offended, to be blunt, and I'm biting my tongue because I want to be respectful. This union's been around. You've been around for 70 years. You didn't get to where you are by asking people to sell you a service. You got to be where you are by being a damn good progressive union, and we're asking you to merge with another damn good progressive union so that we can move the ball forward and become an activist union within an activist labor movement.
Chair of the committee.
Thank you, brother. Thank you very much, Brother Gerard, for taking the time out of your schedule to speak to us here today. Very important to all of the delegates to hear, I think, from the horse's mouth, so to speak. And
Lee, can I just, I want to apologize for getting a little annoyed. But I'm really proud of this union that I've been part of since 1965. Some of you have seen our courses and our conferences and our conventions. You know how we operate. And I found that the last comments were very hurtful. I recognize the delegates' right to say and to ask, but it's a lack of understanding about the quality of the Steelworkers Union. I'm going to defend that every day. So I apologize for getting a little upset.
wouldn't expect anything else, Brother Gerard. And again, thank you very much for taking the time out of your day to speak to all of the delegates here. I know that it's very much appreciated by talking to people. They were looking forward to hearing it from you. Some of the questions that were asked here today, I was very pleased to hear some of the questions that were asked, because they're the kind of questions that we're hearing on the lunch breaks or the coffee breaks and that. So I think you've answered those very directly and forthrightly. And I can say, and I'm I'm proud of this merger agreement that we've negotiated here. I'm proud of the time that you've put into it and your efforts in doing this. And all of my, one of the things we haven't really talked about is we've talked about our unions and how great we believe that our two unions are. But one of the things that I think, what's written on the paper is one thing. That's the stuff that we look through, and that's the stuff that we have our lawyers look through. And we make sure that it's the best for all of our members. But really what we're talking about at the end of the day is that the two cultures are very, very similar, is what I have seen. And in my interaction with the steelworkers has only been nothing but positive. Every single interaction, and that goes from meeting with shop stewards to your delegates to your directors to everybody up to the international board. I've been very, very impressed with the culture, and you can't fake it for a long, long period of time that we've been involved in this, and everything has been 100% genuine. And I thank you on behalf of the convention and on behalf of the Telecommunications Workers Union, and we'll be talking with you soon. Thank you.